And we are live. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
What
Wilson,
is up?
Paolo, and I are all here. Woohoo! Talking comics and toys and whatever else comes to mind.
Exactly. Yeah,
I
I just
also saw your video of Wilson went to the New York Public Library
yes, and
to.
hopefully I said the name of that library correctly. That was on the corner where Marvel used to be. I don't know if you realized
That
that.
that is one of my favorite spots to go down and take street photos
Hmm.
because though I haven't since COVID, for years, for like I don't know, the last 10 years or so, I like to go down like on a maybe one Saturday a month if I can, make it down to Manhattan and take street photos in and around Bryant Park.
Oh,
That
okay.
library is a great place to take street photos because it's such a tourist place that there's already tons of people posing for and taking photos. And
True.
sometimes I've run into like model shoots there and
Mhm.
weddings getting their photos taken. But yeah, that's is that Midtown Public Library or something it's called? Is it?
Pretty much. It's Stravos Nacho. If I'm saying the name correctly, library.
I didn't even
Uh,
know that a person's name in it.
yes, I only know it because I looked it up. But here's the thing with the New York Public Library. They actually they have their own nicknames.
Ah,
So
okay.
so Stravos, Nachos, I forget what the last two letters are. It's nicknamed Sniffy.
Okay.
And the regular the one with the lines in front of it, the name escapes me. I don't
Oh, okay.
recall
That's the
what
one
name
I'm
it,
talking about. You mean the one across the street from that?
across the street from that on the
Oh, that's
corner.
an annex of that library,
Yes.
right? Okay, yeah.
Yes. So
So,
it's considered its own library.
oh, it's considered its own library?
It's
I
it's
did
it's
not know
it's its,
that.
it's its own library. It's still part of the
Okay.
NYPL. It's still part of the library system.
Oh,
Um, and it just happens to be one across the street from the other. But they
yeah.
each are like their own
I,
little thing, and
I
they
thought,
had
yeah, I didn't know that.
renovated it fairly recently, and it's been open for a little while now. But they
Okay.
have the reason why I've been there before is because they used to have a great photo morgue, and a lot of artists I
Um,
knew was going to that library to
okay.
use their photo morgue, and then a bunch of the interns that I knew was using that library to rent DVDs and
Um,
VHSs because again, you have a library card, you're getting to see those movies for free. On the
right.
fourth floor is their graphic novel section, and that's where I happened to pick up this Grendel
Yeah.
omnibus because look at the tome. And they had
Oh,
two
yeah.
others. So this one's Hunter Rose.
Volume 3 is coming out soon. They have volume 1 and
Volume
2 out.
three is out.
Oh, it's out.
They
Okay.
had a volume three. They had a volume one, two, and a three.
Oh, maybe it's a new printing of volume because those were out of print for a while. So they're
Hmm.
coming out with
Right.
new printings of volume 1, 2, and 3. That's what it is, I think.
Very well possible. So because they're so thick and heavy, I only took the one. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I figured I'll enjoy it, I'll read it, go in and get the other ones. Because
Yeah.
Grendel is one of those stories that I know of, and I read bits and pieces.
I have most of it. I bought it when it came out. Good evening, Tit Goblin. And what he's talking about isn't actually the Ghostbusters library. It's kitty
Right.
corner to the
It's
Ghostbusters
kitty corner
library.
across the street from it, and it's
Yeah.
on 40th, on the corner of 40th and 5th, which is down the street of when Marvel used to be on 40th.
When Marvel was on 40th Street, it was in between what 5th and 6th.
Yes,
And so it was on the corner where Marvel was. So the Ghostbusters library is like the big huge one, and
right
then
across the
like
street.
right across kitty corner to it is it's just like a building. It's like a normal New York City building that blends in with all the other buildings,
Or it used to.
or it used
Because of
to.
the renovations, you could
Ah,
tell its library and currently has all the windows of Spider-Man stuff right now because of the Beyond Amazing campaign that they're doing, where
okay,
if you lived in New York City, you could get a Spider-Man library card.
right.
and they had stickers and things like that. So, and again, it is across the street from where they did have
The
the
photo
photo
morgue is
morgue.
still haunted, though.
Actually, I don't even know where they moved it to because I haven't actually. When I went was the first time I actually been. Not the first time I've been in the lobby, but it's the first time I've been through a couple of floors. On the seventh floor, which is the top floor, they have a cafe there. So
Ah,
and it's an open patio area. So if you want to take pictures from above, you have kind of an area you can do that. And I
okay.
think I was able to spot the uh the 10th floor of old Marvel. It's new Marvel. Well, it's not even Marvel there, but whatever
Yeah.
buildings, whatever office is there, I believe we could see the office. I'm not positive, but I think I was able to
Ah.
see the offices.
Yeah, I have no idea where Marvel is now.
Uh, I don't recall. I've been to
Yeah.
a newer office once, but I don't know if they're still there. So they keep moving.
Yeah, Ike likes to save as much money as he can on rent in Manhattan. So he
Yes,
keeps moving the building. He keeps moving buildings when he gets a better deal somewhere.
exactly. Plus, he doesn't like people knowing where he is at any given time, I'm going to assume.
It's
Why didn't he
amazing.
just? Why did he never move to Schenectady?
Too
Yeah.
far away from Florida where he has to go for that tax break. Allegedly.
No, why didn't he move the Marvel offices to Schenectady?
Don't know. Probably couldn't get a good deal.
Yeah. Schenectady. Wasn't there a movie called Schenectady with what's his name? The guy who died youngish. I can't remember his name, but I think there's a movie called Schenectady.
It very well could be. I have no idea where Schenectady is. I do not think I've ever been to Schenectady.
Central New York, I think it is.
Oh, really?
If memory serves, but I may have passed through there at some time. But I just saw something about a new documentary about, I think it was about Schenectady and how corruption brought the city down.
Oh,
Where,
wow.
40, 50 years ago, it was a thriving city. And some kind of corruption, like I said, I only watched the trailer, some kind of corruption between these two factions that were fighting each other stifled all growth and made people want to move out of there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'll have to look that up. I completely forgot about that till you just mentioned Schenectady.
It became Gotham.
Yeah. There's our tie-in. Gotham is really Schenectady.
Yeah. So went to that library basically to we were in the area, my sister and I, and we decided, oh, let's stop in and let me pick up a graphic novel since I haven't done that in quite some time. And yeah, as I mentioned, Grendel was something that I've known about for years. I'm almost sure I picked up early issues. I even
Yeah.
had a mask at one point that I
Ah.
picked up at the comic book shop that I worked in. I think for like $10. There was this regular mask, and I picked it up just for the hell of it because it looked like Spider-Man's mask, the black costume mask. And it's like I think I owned that mask before I even knew about the character. I wish I still had that mask today because I don't know whatever I did with it.
One Halloween in college, I made a Grendel mask so that I could go to Grendel. I was Grendel for Halloween because
Ah,
it's an easy costume to make.
yeah, it's basically
As long
what, a
as you got,
suit.
as long as you can make the mask.
Yeah, and the
Well,
mask is
well,
different than Spider-Man, that's for sure.
right. And
Because
he
you have
didn't. He
the
wasn't even.
eye.
He didn't even have a suit on. It was just like black
Yeah,
sweats.
yeah. If you have
Okay.
a black tracksuit,
Yeah, yeah. There wasn't even like skin tight and white gloves. I think you need and white shoes. There's not much to it really.
Mhm.
That's right. I forgot about that costume.
Yeah, they do the Grendel omnibus omnibuy, and
Yeah, there's the
they're kind of character related. So the first one has all the Enter Rose stories,
uh huh.
The second one has the Christine Spar, Brian Lee Sung, and Incubation Years stories. And the third one has the Eddie and Grendel Khan stories. And the fourth one,
let's show some Grendel.
Get a better look of that costume you were talking about.
Yeah, that's the one I made. All we needed was the white gloves and the black tracksuit and white boots.
There you go. So you already owned the white go-go boots?
I think my boots were shorter. I didn't have them. But I made the what is called his fork, which is like two knives on the end of a staff. I use like a long, skinny cardboard tube. Let's show some more. And
here's the fork,
and
the
some
weapon.
butter knives. I use butter knives for those at the end.
Yeah, but you should use a tube. You should use a broom handle.
I wanted something lighter, and I had it looked the same. That, and I didn't want anything that was an actual weapon to carry. I didn't want to carry around an actual weapon. That just against the spirit of Halloween, kind of. I was Comic-Con safe before there was such a thing.
I hope they do something for the fourth omnibus, because the fourth omnibus has the Grendel Prime stories. So it means that half of the omnibus is taken up with the novel.
Huh.
And if you do mixed media with comics and prose, it doesn't work.
Speaking of that,
okay.
So if they replace the novel with the recent Grendel Odyssey miniseries, it'll work better.
Speaking of that, this is the Department of Truth Wild Fiction Special that I got this week. That it turns out is a reprint of two of the issues.
Oh, really?
Two of the more popular issues, the Bigfoot issue. I started reading it and went, hey, I think I've read this, but I think it's the Bigfoot issue. But one of the things it does is it mixes prose only on about half a dozen pages, but still, this time around, I didn't even bother to read this stuff. I was just like, I'm not wading through that prose. There's, like you said, it doesn't work. Mixing prose with comics just kind of destroys the reality of it.
That thing was one page, maybe two. That would be okay, but I think it takes up like a third of the issue.
Let's see how many pages. But I reread it without the prose. It's good stuff, but I was like, I was a little disappointed. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. What do we got here? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's this handwriting. 9, 10, 11, 12. 13, 14 pages of prose, and I hate this to read someone's handwriting font. I'm just like, or even handwriting. I'm like, I don't want to try to wade through someone's handwriting. Give me type. Make it easy on me.
I like visually the look of it, looking like a diary page. I like that, but I could find that could be annoying to try to read if it's not presented correctly.
When I first got the comics, I read all the prose. Like I said, I read my comics twice before I put them away usually. So the first comic I got, I read the prose. Second time I read them through, I skipped all the prose, didn't miss it at all. This time on the reprint, I skipped all the prose, didn't miss it at all. King's Poet's in the house. Good evening.
Himself.
Merry Christmas, Ranger Fly.
Merry Christmas, Ranger.
They used to have to print a page of prose to get the book rate postage. Yeah, back in the golden and silver age. That looks painful to read. It wasn't fun, Actually, I wouldn't say it's painful to read. The only one, I mean, I don't want to. I don't like to mix prose and maybe a paragraph. That's fine, but like 14 pages is a little much. But the one, when you say painful to read, there was a Wicked in the Divine special. Wicked and the Divine was what's his name? Ooh, Jamie. All of a sudden, they were the guys who did the Young Avengers back in the days. All of a sudden, I can't remember the name. I've read a ton of the guy who writes the Uber too. All of a sudden, I can't remember his name. But anyway, he did the Wicked and the Divine, which I enjoyed thoroughly, and he did a few Wicked and Divine specials that each took place in some different time period. And one of them, I think there was the one that took place in the 1920s. Jamie McKelvey, I think that's the artist. Kieran Gillen, that's the writer. And the one issue was a lot of prose in it. And I got to say, it was some of the worst prose I've read. I'm just like, I don't know what Kieran Gillen was, because I like his writing. I don't know what he was trying to do with this prose, but I found that painful to read. I was just like, whoa, this is not very good prose. Got locked out of my legacy YouTube channel. No idea if I'm going to have to abandon my followers and start over. There must be some way to unlock it. It's just, isn't there, where it sends a contact to your phone or email?
Well, if the legacy YouTube channel was made before Google purchased YouTube, it's not connected to your Gmail account.
Okay.
I still have a legacy YouTube channel, which I don't use. But it is I connected it to the Gmail, so I can still
gotcha. It might be. I see what you mean. It might be unconnected. That's what I meant. A page of hand script is okay, but almost a full book of it, is a pain in the ass. It sure is. 14 pages is too much, but it looks nice. I mean, I think they did a good job with how it looks. I just don't want to read it. The old ones aren't connected that way. Okay, well, that's that could be a problem. You're right. How do you get back in? I have to find your old book of passwords.
Yeah, we used to have one of those until a few years ago. The media sites for car manufacturers all required passwords to get in, because they didn't want civilians to get a hold of high resolution photos. And we kept a file with all of the passwords for all of the car manufacturers. And every once in a while, we'd have to update them because they would require us to re-sign.
And a Bad Idea comic came out this week. Werewolf and the Society of Fearless Frontiersmen. And there's a completely embarrassing production mistake in this.
Oh, what really?
It just makes me cringe. Because ultimately it's my fault. I have excuses for it. On page 7, let me go big here. See that writing right there?
Oh.
What does it say?
Oh.
Stat head from panel 3. Oh, that is so painful. That is so painful. First of all, I don't know how we didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
In the whole, but how it happened was, first of all, this was actually printed once before. So sometimes you just see what you want to see. That's how mistakes get through. You've proved it so many times that you just see what you expect to see, even though it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, what had happened was like, it's completely, and this is why I'm always, don't do things in a hurry. And we actually have a new editor at Bad Idea who's been there for a couple of months now, who's also like, we're trying to get Carl, who I worked with, is like me, just like, let's do this stuff now, so it's not done at the last minute. But of course, things get done at the last minute. And this was actually printed once before in like an ash can for a convention. It wasn't actually printed. So I think everybody expected the files to be fine because it was printed once before. But then what happened is, I don't even remember who, because I get corrections from everybody, didn't like the black. This is a black and gray comic, black and white comic with lots of gray tones. And but they didn't think the blacks were dark enough. It had already printed. I hadn't even seen the printed one because it didn't come to the comic shop. And I was like, okay. Yeah. One of the problems in doing production is when somebody makes aesthetic changes that you don't quite get. I'm like, okay. It makes it a little harder when I'm doing someone thinks the blacks aren't dark enough. And I'm like, they look dark enough to me. But I still have to make the change, even though I don't quite, I'm not going to say I don't agree with the change. I just don't get it. So it's like I'm flying a little blind when I'm making aesthetic changes that I don't necessarily see what they're seeing. But anyway, all I had to do was Wilson will get this, darken the dark end of the curves a little bit. So I ended up just darkening the dark ends of the curves a little bit and making the darks a little darker. Did that. But then what I feared would happen, which is once you and I had to do that to all the pages. And then it wasn't quite right. I didn't quite get it right this is the problem with trying to do something based on somebody's aesthetics, especially somebody who isn't art trained and doesn't quite have the language that we artists have. And editors don't always have the same language that artists have. So I had to do it again, did it the second time, got it right. But then, of course, what I also feared was then started darkening individual pages at individual rates. All of a sudden it was like, well, these 20 look fine, but these 17 maybe could be, because I darkened them all the same, because that's what I have to do, is I have to do everything the same to every page. Oh man, maybe we need a little more on this page, maybe a little more on this page. But every time I had to remake these changes, I had to go back to the original files. Otherwise, there'd be change upon change upon, effect upon effect upon effect, and I wouldn't be able to keep it consistent, and things could get way out of hand. Unfortunately, I somehow forgot that patch wasn't in the original files. And so when I went back to the original file to make it the change of the darks, that patch wasn't in there. And somehow I didn't notice and no one else noticed. And it was just like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing to see that. It's like, oh, how did that happen? But and I had to make a lot of these changes on the last day too. So that's always the danger. I'm always like, no, don't make dramatic changes on the last. Could have done this last week, which we're mostly doing now. But 2 months ago, we weren't doing it as much that way. Like, no, don't make me make big changes, because I know that's when mistakes are made.
Yeah.
But what's weird is this book actually has more mistakes than that, but they're much less embarrassing. Like somehow, see this purple and green logo?
Yes.
That wasn't the one they chose. They chose another color logo. Somehow this file got in. I think it's perfectly good logo. That's like not so, that's not something anybody would know about or care. No, buyer. Because I think these colors work perfectly well on this. But the person who picked the logo was like, well, what happened to the logo color? Which I understand it shouldn't happen. But there was one other production error that I had never heard of before. Where Peter, the editor, had to talk to the guy who manages the production of the print to figure out what happened, because we have one page of orange in the back, just an orange page. It was supposed to be a darker orange, And there's a couple pages in here of that magenta ARG is supposed to be Spider-Man Red, but it came out magenta. And there's a couple other things like that. Like there's not like these blam blam blams that look pink. We're supposed to be Spider-Man Red, 100, 100. It turns out, here's how you learn new things every day. When you print a black and white comic with some color in it, and you have captions that are around 10, like these pink, there's light pink and light yellow captions that are around 10% magenta and 10% yellow. When you do that, there's not enough, the printer, the machine that actually does the printing, there's not enough ink flowing through it for it to represent the darker colors accurately if the other colors are too light. I'm like, I have never heard of that before.
I've never heard of that either.
Because how often do you print a black and white comic with some color in it? Almost never.
Right.
And but that's why the darker end, the magentas, the reds came out a little weird, because the printer can't physically do that. There's not enough ink flowing through it. It messes things up.
Wow.
It's like, oh wow. Okay. That's strange. So if you ever run into that, you know now.
Good to know for the future.
That completely embarrassing. But if you're the type of person who likes to collect production errors in comics, we fixed it. And if there's a second printing, it's not going to be there. So get the first printing with the production error in it, and you'll have a collector's item. Yeah, so I meant to say a page of hand script is okay, but yeah, there we go. Oh, the old ones. I tried a bunch of his old passwords. There you go. None of them worked. With the new machine, it really cheaper to do black and white anymore. I don't know how much cheaper it is to do black and white these days.
I remember talking to another indie comic creator. She was telling me about that in some cases, they are running the black and white books through the color machines.
Yeah, I think they are.
Quicker and easier to do than to set up another machine for it.
Right.
And so they're just pushing it through that way.
Because I was also wondering... because I have heard, I've never seen that like new machines like automatically trap an underprint. I guess they often go by what underprinting you have there, but things are rarely off register because somehow the software does that stuff. And the trapping is like when the plate moves and you can see white lines, like in old comic books, then when things would mess up and the screens wouldn't line up and you'd see like the red leak out of the black line and like Spider-Man's mask, and the color would be off to the left. And because with Bad Idea, we've printed some full like black and white books, like The Lot, I think was one of them. And I usually set them up as 100K, meaning there's no color underprinting in them, because why would there be if it's a black and white book? Why did you underprint in color? But when I see them printed, I'm like, I think these are underprinted. I think they ran these off on a color machine and they're automatically underprinted in color. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what they look like to me. So black and white might not, it's cheaper not hiring a colorist.
Yeah.
I think that might make it cheaper than even the printing. Wouldn't Spider-Man Red change colors through the years in printings? Spider-Man Red is a fixed company color. Yeah. Spider-Man Red is 100% yellow and 100% magenta. that's usually Superman red too. That's like if you want in comic book printing the color we call red, that's what you do. And it was always that. Nowadays with computers, it could change. The colors could put whatever he wants in there, but it's still 100% is still what you'd call Spider-Man red.
Yeah, where you start off with it.
Right.
The closest marker I ever found would be a warm red. Is what would be considered Spider-Man red.
Yeah.
Which has a tint of orange to it.
Because it's got all that yellow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because here's a little thing to tell you people out there. The primary colors that they teach you in grade school are wrong. Red, yellow, and blue are not the primary colors. The primary colors, for at least for physical colors, not for the computer, are cyan, magenta, and yellow. Because you can't mix magenta from red. You can't mix cyan from blue. But you can mix red from cyan and yellow. You can mix blue from, what is it? Cyan and magenta are in blue, right? All of a sudden, I can't remember what Spider-Man blue is. It's 100% cyan. Like, is it 100% magenta or 50%? I can't remember.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I know I have it written down somewhere, but I don't recall. If I have Photoshop open, I could probably just pick it, because you get to the point where it's like you just know it by looking at it.
But nowadays with computer coloring and mood and colors they can color them whatever they want. Back in the day of hand separations and writing down codes on your pieces of paper that the coloring is on, that's what it was. YR. I did my own colors on Elvis, Chicken, and Gigi. I found that the computer color to the computer printer was very accurate. I guess that would depend on what colors you're using and how. I have seen people be very disappointed with their colors when they see it printed. That's just because they didn't have any experience doing it. And sometimes they don't even know to use CMYK or at least CMYK swatches.
Or to calibrate their monitors.
Right. And it also depends on what kind of printing you're doing.
Yeah.
Because some of the short run printing they have now that's actually done on fancy inkjet printers they wanted an RGB. Not that they can print all those RGB colors, but the software is calibrated for it to come in at RGB. But that's not offset printing. That's, like I said, they're actually fancy inkjet printers that they print short run comics and books on. So it's a completely different type of printing. But the werewolf book was pretty good. Took place in World War II. What ethnicity was this guy? It took place in Russia, the Soviet Union. And I think this one guy was supposed to be somewhere up near Siberia. What did they say his ethnicity was? Something I hadn't heard of. Where is it? Salak. Whatever S-A-L-A-K, whatever tribe or ethnicity that is, that's where our lead character comes from in the Soviet Union. And, doesn't like the Soviets because they're from a completely different part of the country than Russia. They're up in the Arctic Circle and hunting werewolves in World War II. Not quite hunting Nazi werewolves. Hunting werewolves that are enthralled to the Nazis. That was part of the plot eventually.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to call them Nazi werewolves because they were subdued into, I don't know what you'd call it, poisoned into fighting for the Nazis. I don't know. There's some way that happened. Some way that happened.
It can be infuriating. Getting to see the mistakes that are done through the printers.
It is rough.
Especially
that one.
I fell into when I'm doing lettering for paper cuts. Sometimes you would not see the mistake in sound effects. And and again, a lot of times it comes down to a box being checked off or checked on.
Right.
And I had to get to the point where when I was creating sound effects, I had to, from the beginning, create the sound effect a certain way so it didn't have that problem. But sometimes when you're working quickly, you might take some text that's already on the page and start modifying it and not realizing, that's not going to trap correctly, or that's not going to have an underprint or overprint or something. I forget what it is, but when it came out on the page, it would be transparent or just black.
Right.
And it'd just be a black outline. It's like, how did that happen? Because again, through all the stages, it looks fine.
Right.
It looks fine on the screen. It looks fine in the PDF. It looks fine in the proof that the printer sends you.
But it doesn't print right.
I ran into that early in my career of that mistake being, and sometimes I don't even look at my early books.
Oh, yeah.
At all, because especially my early lettering, I did manga for years before someone pointed out, you got the crossbars on the eyes within the lettering. And it's like, I didn't even know about that at that time because I wasn't studying lettering when I was doing lettering. It was more like, can you do this? Sure. And again, it was Tim Smith who pointed that out on one of my early books. It's like, look, I finally got some lettering done. It's like, this looks great. But and then once he pointed it out, it's like, oh my God. But my editors never pointed it out.
For those of you who don't know, when you do comic book lettering in all caps, you have the I with the two crossbars on the top. That is only for the beginning of words and I, the word, the word I. If the I comes in the middle of a word, you have just a straight line. You have an I without the two crossbars on top. That's just the way comic book lettering is done.
Yeah, sans serif. So, until it's pointed out, it's like, And so any of my early stuff, I look at, it's like, and that's all I see. I don't see anything else. I don't see all the other correct pages. I just see that one mistake page, and that's all that exists in that book.
When I was reading this werewolf, and it was the last comic I read this week, because I just didn't want to open it after seeing that. Right. But luckily, it's on page 7, so I got it over with early, and then this is like a 60-page comic.
Okay.
So I got it over with early, and then could get back into the comic as I was reading it. But I was like,
I'll have to check, but I think on books like Asterix, what the French do is they use the crossed eyes for the beginning of words, and then they, even though it's all caps, they draw a dot on top of the I in the middle of the word.
They use the crossbar I with a dot on top?
No, they use the crossbar I at the beginning of words.
Okay, they use a line with a dot. They put a dot even though it's
in the middle of the.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of drawn because it's drawn to resemble a circle, an incomplete circle. But it's in asterisk because there's no standard style of lettering. There aren't people trying to do artsy Mac, but they kind of follow a style along the classic magazine. So because the Belgians you didn't use all caps. Tintin doesn't have all caps, so Black and Mortimer doesn't either. But Asterix did. I think that's how they did it in Pilote, and I'm not sure if they were copying Spirou. But in Tintin, they didn't use all caps.
Speaking of lettering, I stumbled onto something in TikTok today that I had never seen before. Now now it must be in my algorithm because they're showing me more of it. There's, I guess there's people on TikTok making some money with like lettering.
Really?
In terms of the first woman I stumbled onto, it's just a shot of her iPad. and it's a shot down on her iPad, and she's using Procreate, and she's doing it live too. And I guess you can tip people now on TikTok or something. So there's a gift button. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I never clicked on it to see what it did. I don't want to be giving away my money not knowing what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But she writes your name all fancy in calligraphy in Procreate. And it takes her 10 seconds to do a name. And says thank you, then moves on to the next, erases it, moves on to the next person, and she just knocks through these names, and she does them real fancy and flowing and nice. And I'm like, wow, I guess you just tip her I don't know what to write your name and fancy. And then later on in the day, like I said, it must have gotten the algorithm. There was another person doing that, and then there was a third person doing that, except he was using physical paper and markers and doing it graffiti style. So someone would tip them,
right?
And he'd do a graffiti style lettering of their name just on the front, and then move it off and do the next person. I was like, wow, who thought of doing that? Making a different way to make money doing calligraphy and lettering. At least I think they're making money.
Yeah, it makes sense because from what I read, there's a portion of TikTok, you go in, you pay real money, and you buy these icons.
Right.
Each icon is a representation of a coin.
Yes, it's like gift or something, and there's a little.
So you get a gift, yes. So you get like roses, hearts, whatever.
Right, okay.
And then the more you pay in, the more extravagant the gift is. And like I've only gone live a few times.
Right.
And I've only gotten likes and stuff like that, which is fine. I'm not there to get money.
Right.
It's just more of like, going live. But if you watch other people's lives and all of a sudden a hat appears on their head, it's because someone gave a gift of the hat, and that costs X amount of money.
Now, does the person who's doing the live get the money, or at least part of the money?
They get a portion of the money.
And
so depending on how, and the rest obviously go because I'm making up numbers here.
Yeah,
so
I don't know.
You pay $1 for this thing, and then it gets put onto the person who receives it. They get, I don't know, 10 cents. I really don't know how.
Yeah, who knows?
I have no idea.
But I just
people haven't figured it out yet. But you do have people who have been using it when they go on live to get that money, and they will keep it or donate it or whatever. Right. I do know a TikToker who drew on Etch-a-Sketch on toys, mini Etch-a-Sketch. She has a chemical she could spray on it and keep the artwork stable. And she made her name of herself for doing that. She was doing it for years. And she was doing it on TikTok. And I believe she was able to use the gifts that she was getting to eventually pay off her student loans.
Wow.
Because she would go live every week with making, people are watching people make stuff. I mean, it really goes back to people like watching artists create.
Mm-hmm.
We sat for hours watching Bob Ross painting. We didn't necessarily be painting ourselves. We would just be watching someone doing it. So it's the same kind of thing, but they're doing it with calligraphy. And it's smart because you're playing on people's vanity because they want to see their name done.
It's amazing. It's like, you probably could make no money doing calligraphy before the thing out of but really
or doing it live in that way.
Too.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Did
Hello,
Chris freeze up on us immediately? No, he didn't.
No, he was off screen.
Okay. Let's see.
Hey, guys.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I found the paper made more difference. I changed to matte paper on GG, and it took the bright cartoony color down, feel down. Yeah, very happy with the books. I was expecting disaster. Let us know when you got them for sale. We'll plug you here. Order some ourselves. I want to start TikTok where I write someone's names with my right foot, and it turns out gibberish, but I act like it's all amazing and fancy. All right, that sounds like, you know what? Who knows what gets popular? There's no recipe you can follow.
Not at all. You just have to be consistent. So if you're ready to show your foot off the goblin, you may make a name for yourself.
Yeah, it's either that or twerking.
What are you working on tonight, Chris?
Just some sketch cards.
Sketch cards. I saw Tim posted some sketch cards earlier on Facebook that he was working on. I'll have to see if he shows up to show them off. Though I think his comment was he kept drawing Space Ghost too big to fit on the card. I'm not quite sure how that happens.
I know exactly what he means.
Yeah. Another comic I got this week. I haven't read it yet. It's not a comic. I wasn't sure, but I think I am. This is an original graphic novel, a Simon Cross thriller, Too Dead to Die, by Mark Guggenheim and Howard Chaykin. And the reason I wasn't sure, like I said, I thought it wasn't. And on the back it says, and it's an original graphic novel. Reunite for an original graphic novel that brings the classic spy novels into the modern world. It's about an old spy being drawn back into. It's like every old spy story. I thought I was out, but they dragged me back in. But I haven't read it yet. But I bought it because it's Howard Chaykin and I like his stuff. Mark Guggenheim's a pretty good writer too. But in just looking through it right before the show, trying to figure out if it was an original graphic novel or a collected edition of something, I thought, is it a collected edition? Because they have covers in it. More like chapter breaks, I guess they would be. So I guess maybe they drew it to possibly be issues originally, but then they did. I'll have to read the introduction when the time comes around. But there's also, as I was flipping through it, there's a strange thing in the back where it's got Simon Cross CIA, a look back. And here are some issues that supposedly came out in the 80s. I say supposedly because it looks like Chaykin's more modern style. And it says in here, and it's got, they're supposedly published, but it says Simon Cross CIA, Phoenix Comics Group. I've never heard of the Phoenix Comics Group.
No, no.
And then it says the final issues of Simon Cross CIA. And these issues are like issues 31 through 36. I'm like, there was a Howard G, and if there was a book that went 36 issues, I think I'd remember it. Are largely considered the best. The final issues of Simon Cross CIA are largely considered the best of the run. Back in the 80s, trade paperback collections were hardly as ubiquitous as they are today. For legal reasons, these issues were never collected. Nevertheless, fans of this arc refer to it as the Bedlam Saga. So there's this whole thing where I think they're trying to make us believe that these comics existed back in the 80s, and this is an update of them. So I think that's the motif here.
Yeah, because it reminds me of the I forget who the publishers was. It might have been Dark Horse when Big Guy and Rusty came out with their books. They had covers to series that never happened. And it sounds a lot like that.
Matter of fact, I just noticed this has got a cover, but this isn't a Howard Chaykin cover. This is a Dave Johnson cover. I was like, huh. I haven't seen Dave Johnson's work in a little while. He's a good cover artist. But I look forward to reading this. $20 minus 10%. I look forward to reading it. You guys read any good comics lately?
Nope. I only picked up Grendel, but I haven't started reading it yet.
How about you, Chris?
No.
Oh my goodness, you guys!
I haven't read anything in a while.
I took the time to reread the IDW, the Dynamite Buck Rogers.
Ah, okay, been reading that one.
Mm-hmm. Huh. It was fun.
Got the minimum number of books to check the printing, and they already sold on DMs. Need to reorder the rest of the 1,000 I am printing. Oh, okay, cool.
Very cool.
Very cool. It's good to sell stuff. There was a public access channel in the 90s where an artist painted while on the treadmill. TikTok before TikTok. Oh, yeah. Sleepy readers here. Here's the Cavern of Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. I loved those imaginary Big Guy and Rusty covers. I love
they were really good looking covers.
as is obviously by my own imaginary covers I show off all the time. I love sort of the art of the comic book cover.
Mm-hmm.
Strange Creatures is great. Oh, the new Gru was wonderful. I did not get the new Gru because I did not like it. I'm inconsistent with my Gru buying. That's why it is. But now I want to check out the new Gru because Sleepy says it's wonderful.
I don't recall the last time I bought a Gru issue. It might have been just the Marvel stuff. I don't think I ever got it when it went past Marvel.
I bought all the Marvel stuff. I bought it before Marvel. I bought some of it after Marvel. But in the last 20 years, I've been iffy with it. But I did buy Gru Tarzan, which I wasn't that fond of. Yeah, that's it. Gru and Tarzan sucked. That was the problem. That, and I'm disappointed with the physical quality of Dark Horse books. That keeps me from buying some Dark Horse comics. It's like they're printed on tissue paper. The covers are tissue paper. And I just don't like spending $4 on tissue paper.
Instead of doing Gru Tarzan, what they should have done was Gru George of the Jungle. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That does make sense, yeah.
Gru Tarzan did not make a lot of sense. You are right. But yeah, when Gru went to sort of the mini-series format in the 90s sometimes, I kind of lost track of it. But that because I think it disappeared for a few years too.
Yeah.
Your new cover you did this week, Jared, was awesome. I love the magenta and slime green. My favorite cover combo. It might be my favorite. Wow, that's good. Let me show it to you. It's over here on my.
It's your most Kirby work ever.
A color combo I don't use that often. Magenta and green. It's just weird.
What issue number is that?
This is issue number 165.
And still only a quarter? That's amazing.
Still only a quarter, yep. Once I make a trade dress, I stick to it. Hard to believe I've done 165 of those, though. I mean, those ones actually, because sometimes I just skip around numbers, like for other covers I've done. I'd skip around numbers to make different eras or whatever. With that one, I've just gone from 1 to now 165 in order.
Nice.
Paolo's right. It's very Kirby. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the color scheme Kirby's color schemes were garish. Much like that one.
Yeah. And the catcher's design as well. It's got those head thing elements.
Mm-hmm. The thing.
Next, you do a Mobius hat.
Mobius hat. Good idea. I picked up another of these I've been enjoying these Archie horror comics. They're usually just like 8-10 page stories. And this one we've got Betty and Archie going out hunting Krampus, trying to get Jughead to go with them until Jughead's a vampire. I'm not a vampire, a werewolf in this universe. So he tells the story of how he killed Krampus when he was a werewolf. Fun story. And then we get a story about what's this one? Wrath of the Sugar Plum Fairy. This is just about, Christmas, Sugar Plum Fairies being a monster and killing people. So it's fun. It's fun stuff. I've actually enjoyed a lot of these Archie horror books just as fun, quick comics. I now have an Archie horror section in my collection that I put on.
Amazing.
Yeah. Archie. They often have really nice covers, like this cover, I think, is a nice, fun cover. That they have good cover art on them. Who did this one? Hack? After Harry Lucy. What's his real name? I think they tell us in here. Robert Hack. Okay. This is a B cover. Yep, 121. Cover B. Direct edition. Do they do newsstands of these?
They may have.
I don't think I've seen actual Archie comics on the newsstands in ages. Like I see the digests point of purchase sometimes, but not the comics.
Well, they might be selling them in like larger newsstand places. Like
Okay.
I know, like Hudson was doing, like had a line for a short while. Hudson News had like deals with comic companies for a while.
Deals with comic
Because
companies.
newsstands aren't the same as newsstands used to be.
No.
So I would imagine that's the kind of places they're going to, are just really big. I mean, I don't even know. Do they still have big magazine shops?
That's a good question. Last I knew, they had them in like bookstores, but I haven't even been to like a Barnes and Noble that used to have a big magazine stand in ages.
Some specialized magazines moved to bookstores or to megastores at least.
Like traveling through Penn Station, they have a bookstore that also has magazines, but there's no like magazine stand anymore.
No, because I remember the city used to be full of just, you walk in, that's all they were selling was magazines, occasional cigarettes and candy, but it was all wall-to-wall magazine shops.
Sleepy used to see Archie at Barnes and Nobles. Yeah, I haven't been to a Barnes and Noble in so long. Good evening, Saul. How you doing? Sadly, paper is going away. There's still a lot of stuff on paper. I don't know about going away, but it's not the same as it once was.
Right.
Have any of you guys known anyone at Archie? Their house style and how they produce things is a mystery to me, with the exception of their new stuff like the horror. Yeah, I've known
plenty of people. I've almost worked there for a short time because they had a I kind of slightly interviewed for a archivist position because they were trying to organize their art warehouse thing. And so it's like I had a couple of talks with them because it would have been like it seemed like it was just going to be a summer job, and I got as far as just talking, but never went any further. So I never got to actually see the offices because they're in New York, not New York City, but in New York State. So it was something I almost got to. But I've known people that work there. I think I probably still know people that work there.
Right.
Background wise, like how they came up with stuff, no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Matt Manley, friend of mine from college who also worked at Marvel in the 90s, worked at Archie before he worked at Marvel. And Joe Quesada's wife, Nancy Quesada, what's her Nancy DeKezian? She worked at Archie before she worked at Marvel Knights.
Right.
And she worked at Marvel.
And so did her assistant Kelly, I think was at Archie as well. I don't recall Kelly's last name right now. But they were from Archie. Ski eventually went over to Archie for a while.
Okay.
Ski was over there for a while. And I know a couple of artists here and there that done work for Archie.
You ever done any work for Archie, Chris?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Oh, by the way, did you guys see the news this week that Aftershock is going into bankruptcy?
Mm-hmm.
I did see the headline. I didn't go far into it to read it.
Yeah, I'm amazed that Archie still exists sometimes too. I wonder how big their sales are. I know they were the one thing I know from talking to the people who work there is they don't pay a whole lot.
Not at all, from what I hear. So they don't pay all that much to the artists. They're in newsstands, so they never left newsstands.
Right.
And
they actually pay money to be placed in grocery stores and stuff like that.
And Archie has never been famous outside the United States.
Yeah.
So it's not like they do a lot of money on foreign licensing. Mm-hmm. But I know that that Archie 1949 did moderately well in France.
And they're also in, where are they in? Mamaroneck?
I think so.
There's someplace in Westchester,
Yes.
New York,
Yes.
which is one of the most expensive counties in New York State, which makes it one of the most expensive counties anywhere. And it's amazing that they must have bought their building a long time ago.
I would assume that they own the building that they're in from way back when
Right.
it probably was affordable to get a building.
Yeah.
And if you're not paying your artists all that much, I don't know how many books that they put out and what's going on with that.
They put out a fair amount of those horror ones.
Yeah. So those have to be doing well, and they're consistent.
Archie needs ducks to be popular in Europe. Yeah, but now I think I know why Mike Martz really left Aftershock Comics.
He might have saw it coming.
Yeah, because Aftershock Comics is now in bankruptcy. And I actually read the article more if you want to know more than the headline. If they can make a movie that gets the fans excited, then they may survive. Aftershock, that is. Yeah. What according to whoever it was at Aftershock, they are planning on being out of bankruptcy. And here's something, I only learned reading Comic Wars about Marvel's bankruptcy in the 90s. Marvel's bankruptcy was historic in that Marvel was in bankruptcy for 20 months. That's not how bankruptcy works. Most bankrupt companies are in bankruptcy for a month or two. And then they're out of it or out of business. That's what made Marvel's bankruptcy historic, was 20-month bankruptcies are unheard of, at least according to the book.
Yeah.
I don't know. General Motors was restructuring under Chapter 11 for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I imagine they're the exception, too. When you're General Motors, you're the exception.
Yeah, that's when they came up with the expression "too big to fail."
Right.
It's starting to sound not so historic.
Like I said, I only know this from this book. I don't really know that much about bankruptcy.
This book doesn't know about the cars.
But I tell you that just because the guy from Aftershock who was quoted says they expect to be out of bankruptcy in a month or two. They expect to pay back all their debtors. He said they're only going through bankruptcy because one of their creditors was going to have a hostile takeover. And it's not only Aftershock that's in bankruptcy, it's their parent company, the TV company, whatever that is. So I imagine whoever's going after them wants the TV company. And the Aftershock Comics are just there. That's me reading between the lines, because no one wants a hostile takeover of a comic book company, really. Except for, Valiant, but that wasn't really hostile. That was part of the deal. But yeah, I would guess that's why Mike Martz went to Mad Cave, was he went, go bankruptcy? I'd rather go take another job. I don't follow it, but Archie seems like it could be a copy and paste things reused in the house style, and stories are so similar. They remind me of things like Dave Sims' Cerebus and Hell production one. Well, they definitely have a house style, which is all, what's his name? Dan Parent? Is that the guy, the original Archie guy who the house style is based
DeCarlo.
on? Dan DeCarlo. Dan Parent is the second one, right?
Well, Dan Parent's a guy who works now.
Yeah, he works. Okay, so I always mix up the two Dans. So it was Dan DeCarlo, who was originally in the 50s.
Yeah, he left Marvel around 1959 to go to Archie, and they redesigned Archie to make it modern.
Right. And Dan Parent works for Archie now in that Dan DeCarlo style.
Right.
Okay.
And they had a few cartoons over the years. They got the TV series now. I don't know if they own Sugar Sugar, if they're getting residual money from that song.
No. Whichever production company, they probably licensed the Archie look, but the song would always belong to the label, to the music label.
Because I think I think it's credited as the Archies singing that song.
That in itself doesn't mean anything.
Okay, I don't know if that's was part of the licensing deal.
Okay, so let's see what's in. How's it?
One of the most influential books on me in the last 20 years or so has been this Dan DiCarlo pinup art book. As you can see, I've got pages post-it noted.
I have something similar, but it's a lot smaller book.
I just love the way he draws these pretty women in here. It's just, I've for doing like simple cartoon figures like this, I've swiped some of his style on occasion. Sometimes do those Dan DiCarlo eyes.
Uh-huh.
But really,
when I was
really
doing a
good.
comic strip, when I was doing my web comic, I was doing those eyes for all the women in my comic.
I just really like the stuff. A ton of Aftershock artists said they haven't been paid forever. Yeah, Chapter 11 will probably make them last on the list. The guy said he wants to pay them all, but I've heard that from bankruptcy people before. Like Dave Sharp was on the list of people who haven't been paid from Aftershock. Cerebus in Hell was crap, in my opinion. Avant-garde bullcrap. I like Cerebus in Hell, but I realize I'm in the minority. It's kind of weird. Though they did have one genuinely good issue. I think it was Batvark recently, where instead of the comic strip format, they actually did the comic book format for a Cerebus in Hell. That was actually that was the first issue I would recommend to people. Otherwise, like you have to. I like avant-garde bullcrap, so I'm okay with Cerebus in Hell, but I realize most people aren't. That's not most people's jam.
And with Aftershock, that they also was listed that not paying their printers as well?
Yeah, they owe like $400,000 to their printer or something like that.
Wow.
It was a big number. It amazes me how big the numbers are that publishing companies run up with the printers that don't pay that they don't pay. I'm like, because I've seen over the years, I've seen whatever publishing company going bankrupt, and they owe their printer $600,000. They owe their printer $1.7 million, and I'm just like, at what point does the printer cut them off? I mean, can they just not? Because then they'll never get their money. But at what point do you let a client run up a $600,000 printing bill before you go, all right, we're not going to 800,000. Sorry.
Right.
But if you don't go to 800,000, you might never get paid. Man, that must be a tough business when that happens.
Yeah, it would have to be.
Okay, so Sugar Sugar was produced by the Kirshner Entertainment Company, but one of the songwriters was contracted to RCA Victor at the time.
Mm-hmm. Don Kirshner's rock concert? Don Kirshner's rock concert? That's the Kirshner, right?
No, Kirshner Entertainment Company.
But I think is Don Kirshner the guy who owns that stuff?
Looks to be, yeah. Supervised by Don Kirshner, yeah.
Yeah. He's just, there used to be a show on, like in the 70s, I think it was, called Don Kirshner's Rock Concert that had all those acts on it. So I assume he was a music mogul then.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Don DiCarlo reminds me of Darwin Cook. Don DiCarlo has influenced a lot of people. He was around long before Darwin Cook, so Darwin Cook should look like Dan DiCarlo. But yeah, like this stuff is all from the 50s and 60s, I think.
Before Stan Lee reused
56 to 63.
Before Stan Lee reused the Willie Lumpkin in the Fantastic Four, it was actually the title of a short-lived newspaper strip that he co-created with Dan DiCarlo. He was the artist.
I mean, just these cartoony pinup girls are just terrific. I just think he does such a nice job with them. Well, yeah, I've had this book open a lot. Spine's nice and broken. There's a volume 2 of it, I think. I think this is out of print now. When did I get this? Fantagraphics published this one back in... Come on, where's the freaking page? 2006. Oh, this is the second edition. I must have got it in 2006 then. Originally 2005. This is the second printing, 2006. So good. Like I said, he's been a big influence on me since around 2006. Before then, I didn't really appreciate Dan DeCarlo that much before I got this book. Good stuff. What? Here's another thing I got this week that I really liked, that I'm still debating on ordering the other issues. This is Craig Thompson's Ginseng Roots. Issue 11 of 12. And issue 10 was the first issue I got. And it's just a terrific autobiographical story about him making a book about ginseng, because when he was a kid, he came in an area from, I think, Wisconsin, is it, where they grow ginseng, and it was a big part of his childhood, and he wanted to make a comic about ginseng, and it ended up, I guess, being a comic. I've only read 2 issues of it, a comic about him making a comic about ginseng. The last 2 issues, he's been traveling, like in this issue, he's in China, I think it is, visiting ginseng farms and stuff, and talking to people, and it's just so nicely done. And you can, who's this printed by? It's printed by Uncivilized Publishing, I think, is it, or uncivilizedbooks.com. And you can, and these are like $6 an issue. And you can go to their website and order them. And you can also order a nice slipcase for all 12 issues that they can go in when they come out. But it's like to order like 9 $6 issues, and slipcase is $15. And I just know they're going to come out with like a $30 collected edition of it, because that's what they do. So it's like, do I really want to spend $75 or $80? But then I look at these individual issues, and they're so nice. I really like looking at them and reading them like this. So I might actually spend the money, but who knows if I will or not, because that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But there's no other way to get it in these, nice little individual issues. But nice stuff. I remember he did Blankets. That's his famous and most popular work. And they even mentioned he was some people in China knew who he was because someone bootlegged Blankets, because he's got no official publisher. So he had fans in China, but no actual book that he published there. But I remember Blankets came out in the aughts sometimes. And I remember reading it, and I don't even remember it now. I was not that, there was a time in the aughts where big, thick indie graphic novels were like the most popular thing around for like maybe 5 or 6 years, and then they disappeared. I don't know what to call that era when, Blankets and Bottomless Belly Button, and there was like 20 of them. That there were like these indie books that were like 500 pages thick. And they were a darling of the industry for a while and just stopped. But and I remember reading Blankets, because, matter of fact, did I borrow Chris's copy of Blankets, or was someone else?
Might have been.
I don't recall.
I think I borrowed Chris's copy of Blankets. And now I want to go back and read it because I never got it. So, Ginseng Man, he roots out evil. Bada bing. That's all. Chris can make that idea work. Ginseng Man, he roots out evil. Paulo's brain power and Wilson's archival skill combined can be able to sort out Chris's coulometer mystery. Was Chris ever on the coulometer? That's what we want to know.
Chris, who, me?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, we don't know. They're not archived anywhere.
What's the coulometer? Is this just like?
Remember the bullpen bulletin? We mentioned it some week prior.
Oh, then definitely no. That was before my time.
They used to have the coulometer on the bullpen book telling you what was cool and what was uncool that month. I think Barry Dutter might have been writing it at one point.
They should do a trade collection of all the bullpen bulletins from the 1960s. Starting in the 1960s and going all the way through the 2000s.
That'd be interesting.
Didn't they do that? I want to say, or maybe it was Stan's soapboxes were collected.
Oh yeah, I think those were collected at one point. The Stan soapbox.
Yeah, I don't know if the bull.
Now that you mention it, it was years ago. Now it's like oh God, I don't know when things happened.
Just a few years ago. Once you hit a certain age, it was a little while back.
It was 5 years ago or 25 years ago, one or the other.
Yes, that's basically how time works for us now.
But it's funny. I finally got around to watching. I caught up on some of Sleepy Reader's videos earlier this week and watched his last 3 videos. And he come over here and get it. And he commented on it on Twitter, but he bought when he made an order to mycomicshop.com, he bought this issue of Marvel Age with me in the back and forgot why he bought it. So in the video, he's showing off his comics and he goes, Marvel Age? Why did I buy that? And he had another Marvel Age 2 and he remembered why he bought it. And he was like, Marvel. He's like, why did I get this one? Did it have something to do with the cover? He's like, New War. And he's like, I'll look through it later. And he puts it back. And then later on Twitter, he showed off a picture of it. And he's like, oh, now I remember why I bought this Marvel Age. It's the one that I'm in the back of. My name is in the back of. He's like, but it's funny watching him go, why did I buy this one? I don't remember. I don't like the New Warriors. There you go. That's why he bought it. New talent, Jared Osborne. And I was like, proof I exist.
New talent. Now people look at that issue and wonder, I wonder what happened to that Jared Osborne guy. He probably never amounted to anything.
He obviously wasn't talented enough.
Mm-hmm. He's good, but he's no John Byrne.
Yeah.
Speaking of production people, the Grand Comics database tells me your friend Ed Lazzolari had his birthday today.
Oh, he's got his birthday. That's right. I must have seen that on Facebook. He's a published author now too. Thanks.
So he made something of himself.
Thanks to one of my barbecues. One of my friends who I went to purchase with, Seth Lerner, was the art director at Tor Books. He's art director somewhere else now, but he was at Tor Books for 15 years or something. And I think it was the first every year I throw a barbecue around my birthday, first Saturday in August. Invite all my friends. And it's usually the same gang and us in there. And I think this was probably the first time I saw Ed Lazzolari in years. He showed up at the barbecue, with his new wife and was hanging out. And he found out that he was talking to Seth, and Seth's like, "Oh, I'm the art director at Tor Books," and Ed Lazzolari was like, "Oh, he's like, I wrote a book. You want to read? You want to read it? I'll give you a copy." And So he gave Seth a copy of a printout of the book, and Seth read it and actually liked it and passed it on to whoever at Tor was in charge of, deciding what books get published, and liked it and published. I think he published that, and I don't know if it was a trilogy or 4 books in the series, but if you look up Ed Lazzolari, he's got a series of books published by Tor Book. I don't think he's had one in a while because they just didn't sell enough copies, and it turns out that getting a few books published by an author as an author is a nice thing, but unless you're a best-selling author, you really don't make money at it. You don't make enough money at it to make a living. So he's working somewhere as, I don't know what I don't think he's an art director. He works at some company doing production art stuff. I don't even know what. Because I was asking him, I was like, how much you own for like your first book? You get like $8,000, and unless you become a hit author, you keep getting $8,000. And selling one book a year for $8,000, that's not exactly life-changing money. But yeah, he got. I still have yet. I have most of my friends have read them. I haven't read them. I'll have to go and read them. So not only I think he's probably credited in a Marvel Comics drawing a Marvel Comics Presents story too. I have a memory of him drawing a Name a Rita story in Marvel Comics Presents. But I didn't know Grand Comics Database did birthdays.
They do. You can check the birthdays a week, up to a week in advance.
You can check upcoming birthdays.
Yep. So today was the birthday. Hey, did you guys ever work with Phil Felix?
He was before my time, but I think I met him a few times. He was I think he was a letterer. Well, I don't think he was in the bullpen, but I remember him coming in, I think.
The name is familiar, but I don't recall if I met him.
Yeah, I definitely met him, but I couldn't say I know him.
Yeah, it's his birthday as well.
Okay.
Also, Gianluigi Bonelli, creator of the longest-running Western comic in the world. Tex started in 1948, still published every month, still published. They do monthly reprints of old stories in 2 different formats.
Wow. Chris is resetting up for us. What are you working on? You're changing workstations?
Yeah, I'm just going to go over here and I got to scan some stuff.
What are you scanning in the cards?
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Okay. I just got a new scanner last week, I think it was. So I actually replaced my, what is that thing? 16-year-old slide scanner this year, and replaced my 14-year-old 8.5 by 11 scanner. But my nearly 20-year-old now 11 by 17 scanner I'm not replacing. It still does fine. So that's where I replaced 2 out of my 3 scanners this year. Luckily, one of them was only $150 refurbished. The other was $600, so that wasn't cheap. My mother has a series of best-selling knitting books. Tons of copies sold all the time, mostly in Canada. Their publisher grew from the success by my mom has probably made $20,000 a year, if that. Isn't that amazing? And I read it. Of course I remember. After I read it, of course I remembered. That was just so funny. I didn't see that video of you getting it till this week going, why did I get this one? I don't remember. My most treasured Marvel. Most treasured Marvel age. Dun, dun, dun. Greg Thompson's another book I picked up this week that was good. I'm really enjoying this Junkyard Joe. Much more than I enjoyed Geiger. Not that I didn't enjoy Geiger, but Geiger was a B to me. Junkyard Joe is more of an A. And I really like Gary Frank's art in this. It is much more expressionistic than, I mean, whoever uses the word expressionistic to describe Gary Frank art? Nobody. But he's actually got some decent expressions there. Let me see if I can find some of the better ones. And body language. And he's got the teenagers doing sneers even. And let me see if we go. It's sort of stuff he doesn't really do that. It's like just this shot in the car of the family, of all of them sort of in different poses with different expressions. You don't usually see that in Gary Frank superhero work. So it's nice to see. He's doing a very good job. Here's some more expression of these two teenage girls. The one picking on her and the one getting picked on. So it's like, wow, Gary Frank's getting some range here. I like it.
The colorist helps make it three-dimensional.
Yeah.
Because usually
she's
whoever
crying.
colors...
Just a crying teenager shot. Very nicely done. Let's see, who is the colorist on this? We got Brad Anderson is the colorist. Rob Lee does the letterers. That's just
Is Gary Frank inking himself this time?
Yeah, he's inking. It's all Gary Frank. Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. And the color is very subtle too. He's doing sort of two-tone modeling, if keeping it subtle. But like I said, I've really been enjoying this, and part of here's a nice static, like all of a sudden they're all looking at you like, huh? A character interrupted shot, nicely done. But like I said, I've been really impressed with this book, and a lot of it's because of Gary Frank. I don't think I've ever been as impressed with him as I've been with Junkyard Joe. Good stuff. Not that I ever thought he was terrible or anything, but now he's impressing me. Works out to minimum wage. Oh, the best-selling knitting books. Yeah. Hey, guys, dropping by to wish you all Merry Christmas, Feliz Natal. Okay. Merry Christmas to you too, Gus.
We do have one of our Portuguese streams lined up for next week.
Ah, okay. What are you going to be talking about?
Best comics of the year.
Best comic of the year.
Mm-hmm. But one of our members is coming back from Singapore, where he actually gave his Portuguese book to a few of the local publishers, and it's probably going to get published in Asia.
Oh, cool! Cool.
He was there working he took his and bought a bunch of comics and took his comic.
Ah, nice. Give us a little preview. What are some of your best comics of the year?
Well, I only read about 3 or 4 comics, so
they're all the best. So is one of them the best, or 3 of them the best out of the 4?
I don't know yet.
I was actually looking for. I remember at the end of last year, I did they weren't quite best comics of the year. I had some. I forget the categories I had, but I was like looking for the document. It was the first time I had done it, and I have no idea what I named the document or where I put it. So far, I haven't been able to find it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I remember going over it on this blog, and I printed it out, but I have no idea where the actual document is. Hopefully, I'll find it before the end of the year, but I make no promises.
Mm-hmm. The AI-generated comic that my LCS's owner did, well, that's not the best comic of the year.
I actually used AI-generated art this week for a little thing where I was doing... I should say I used it as reference. I've been working on This is one of my Gatsby illustrations that we probably can't even see it. It's so dark. And this is the one that is actually described by the narrator in the book. And I've never seen any illustrator try to pull this off, probably because it's so ridiculously hard. But the narrator of the book at the end describes his feelings about that summer that he spent in West Egg on Long Island with Gatsby. And he describes it as a painting. He describes it as a night scene by El Greco with hundreds of houses in the back and 4 men in suits carrying a woman up to her house, but they got carrying a woman on a stretcher who's passed out drunk, carrying up to her house, but it's the wrong house, and there's a lusterless moon in the sky. I did the whole thing I still don't think I'm finished with it. There's still things I want to change. But I forgot the moon. Forgot the moon. But that's okay. I was compositing it. It's like I drew the whole landscape and I drew the figures on a different sheet of paper and then just composited them digitally. I'm like, I'm going to put a moon. I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do for the moon. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put that into an AI generator. El Greco, night scene, lusterless moon. And it shot out like 4 moons for me. And I went, okay, I can do a moon. Got out my circle template and drew my own moon. But just looking at those 4 AI moons kind of made me go, all right, I can do a moon. Because there's really not a lot to it.
Right.
But for some reason, I was stuck on it. And there's really not a lot to my moon either. No, it's a moon, lusterless. Not a lot of shine to it. So I did actually use AI art as part of my process, but it wasn't the finished part of my process. Paulo, I'm having codfish and drawn butter this week from a recipe my great-grandparents got from the Portuguese fishermen that they knew. Ooh.
Yeah, it's traditional to eat codfish on Christmas Eve over here. Usually with some sort of boiled cabbage.
And if you want to know more about cod, read the book I read, 20 years ago, Cod, History of the Fish That Changed the World. It was traditional across all of Europe to eat cod on Friday, and to eat fish on Friday, and cod was the big fish they would eat.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, we humans have ate cod so much that we've affected the cod populations in the oceans. Yes. I don't even know if they've recovered.
Well, we still eat a lot of cod, so yeah. It's still there.
The last time I bought it wasn't that expensive, so there's still a lot out there.
The hell with your cabbage?
I guess he does not like cabbage.
We do have a nice recipe of cabbage red sausage. Well, so that we sometimes eat.
With the cod down, there are more lobsters. That was one thing when I read that book 20 years ago. They stopped fishing cod so much to give the cod populations a chance to build up, but they hadn't been because other things were taking that niche, like I guess lobsters.
Mm-hmm. In the
cod moratorium is still on since 1990. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we get it. Mostly we get our cod from Norway nowadays. So, and I know that in the 50s, the herring population of the North Sea was almost decimated, and you couldn't fish herring for about 20 years. But in Portugal, we don't eat herring.
Cod ate baby lobsters. Okay. Mm. Everyone loves Junkyard Joe. I chose not to get it because I was meh on Geiger by the end. I agree with you on Geiger, but Junkyard Joe has been really good. So sometimes the second time's the charm. That, and I wanted to get. I always say to myself, well, if some of these mainstream guys ever do indie books, I'll pick them up because I want to encourage more indie books. And so that's why I started picking up like Geiger and what was the one by Scott Snyder and Nocterra. That's why I started picking up those Scott Snyder and Tony Daniels. Like, I want to encourage more attention to the indie books. So if mainstream guys come over there, I'll buy some of their stuff.
I think they, with the way sales are now, I think they prefer. I think they figured out that they can make more money, if not up front, but they can make more money with indie stuff or author.
Yeah.
Author stuff nowadays.
On the back end. If they can keep their trade paperbacks selling and in print. That's, passive income. So Paulo does more comic book hangouts than comic book reading.
Yeah. No.
I think I'm the only one on this particular comic book hangout who spends more time reading comics.
I did buy some stuff, but I've been so focused on European stuff in the last year or so that I only bought the only thing American that I bought was
tell us about the European stuff too.
Yeah, I bought the two Department of Truth volumes and the 2 Once and Future volumes. So I have to go back for volumes 3 and 4.
Have you read them?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you like them? I didn't hear you talk about Department.
No, I did. I mentioned it a few months ago when I bought them.
Okay. I don't remember. It was a few months ago. We've talked about a lot of stuff since then. Mm-hmm. That must be it.
I'm finding, picking up comics and reading comics are two different hobbies for me at the
moment. That is true.
Since I'm not picking up any Marvels or DCs, it's kind of weird. It makes it look like I'm not reading anything.
Ah, okay. I see what you mean.
And I have been looking into whether or not to get one of those yearly subscriptions to either the Comixology or to Marvel, getting their year thing. I'm really considering it come January whether or not to actually go ahead and get it so I can at least start reading on what's been going on. Because like some people will mention stuff and it's like I had no idea that was going on.
That looks like Scott is on with. I buy so many more books and comics than I can ever read. Like he's agreeing with Wilson. It's a different buying the comics is a different hobby than reading them.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different. That's why I only buy as many as I can read.
Yeah, I bought the Brodeck Report over a year ago, and I still haven't read it. I did read George Best's Dracula, and Earl Grey has been doing his review of the comics of the best comics of the year, and he mentioned that I think it was in the 31 to 40 video.
Okay.
He liked Frankenstein. Now we're only getting George Best's Frankenstein in Portugal next year. But it's good. It's something that if I hope they publish it in English in the United States because it's really worth it. Their direct George Best, French artist, did direct adaptations of Bram Stoker's Dracula and of Frankenstein. And well, I haven't seen Frankenstein yet, but Dracula is absolutely gorgeous.
That reminds me, I talked, I think, last week or the week before about sales on collected editions at Amazon/Comixology. And they had a Masterwork, they might still be on, a Masterworks sale of Spider-Man. So it was, for a digital Marvel Masterworks, it was $2. So I ended up getting the first 100 issues of Spider-Man digitally just because. I was like, you know what? I just want that in my digital library. So I picked some of those up. Jared, I tried the $2 Vampire Teen book this week. The art looked too meh for me to continue. had a Google traced feel to it. It's a $2 book. Just buy it to encourage more $2 books.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
It's $2.
It's a $2 book. If you want more $2 books to succeed, buy this $2 book. Because I'll tell you the lesson they're going to learn. It's the same lesson Tom Brevoort told me they learned in the 90s with, what was that dollar Spider-Man book, Untold Tales?
Untold Tales of Spider-Man. There was 9 books set up to sell for $1.
Right.
And it was the Marvel 99-cent books. And I think Untold Tales was part of that series. I don't remember the rest of the series. All I remember is that on one of the editor's door, they had a big red X on each book that got canceled. And I think Untold Tales was the last book to get canceled.
Untold Tales, a lot of people, like I never really read. I think, did Kurt Busiek write that one?
I believe so. And then Pat Orloff was the artist.
Right. There's a lot of people who swore by that book and loved it. The problem was, as Tom Brevoort explained to me, people saw a 99-cent book as inferior. There must be a reason this one isn't full priced. It's because it's not as good as the full priced one. That was people, they did, I don't know how they figured that out. They did something to figure that out. So that's why it's like, even though people were always saying comics should be cheaper, they didn't buy the cheaper comics. And I think that's still true today. The reason I buy Spawn is it's still a $3 comic. But people say they want cheaper comics, but they don't buy the cheaper comics because they see them as inferior.
There was one thing
what they want is the comics they already buy to become cheaper.
Yeah, but there was one thing that was true. Comics for kids were cheaper and what they may have thought, it wasn't that the comic was bad because it was cheap. They thought if it's cheaper, it's for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And given that at the time most superheroes were already going into their 20s, I don't want to buy a comic for kids.
It was like,
which is kind of funny because
your influence for power over me stops at this vampire book and your Spawn habit. Said I'm buying them because they're cheap. You got to do it. If you're not going to support the cheap books, they're not going to make cheap books.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works.
There's the other thing. The best-selling Marvels at the time were the X-Men, which were $195, and the $150 Avengers and Fantastic Four didn't sell, which is what it turned them into Heroes Reborn.
Mm-hmm.
So Avengers,
we're going to badmouth Rob Liefeld again.
Like Chris said, they want the comics that they already buy to be cheaper. They don't want cheaper comics.
Yeah. The thing is, the paper on the X-Men at the time was different from the 195 books were using the print. I think they were using the coloring and printing process that Marvel had got from Malibu.
Marvel didn't get anything from Malibu.
No?
Nope.
But they got the paper was different. The paper stock was different.
That whole they got the coloring was just a cover story. Mm-hmm. None of Marvel's stuff went through. Well, probably some of it may have gone through Malibu. I don't even remember because at that time they were still doing color separations. I think separately from digital color. I think when Marvel bought Malibu.
Yeah, wasn't there still weren't there some Malibu effects credits on coloring?
Probably on some of them, but that's Marvel bought Malibu. It turned out no one found out till years later to keep it out of the hands of DC.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason they bought it. Their cover story was they bought it for their coloring department. But we knew their coloring department was just some guys on Photoshop, which we already had as freelancers. There was no double secret coloring department at Malibu that knew some sort of thing that people at Marvel didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I didn't figure. What I figured the thing that would be most interesting would be if you bought the printer's contract,
right?
Because then you start printing the Marvel comics in the Malibu schedule.
Yeah,
and if it's a printer that's better with better quality paper,
They all use the same. They're still the same. Use the same printer. Marvel, the Solisco up in Canada, still the same printer. Believe me, Marvel gets. Everybody else works around Marvel's schedule, so them getting the schedule is nothing. Even then, everybody you work around Marvel's schedule. The printer, Marvel doesn't work around other people's schedule. The most expensive coloring department of all time, considering what you can pay freelancers. Exactly. That's why we thought they were insane when we heard that. They bought it's like for their mother department was, they were even teenagers on Photoshop. They weren't, Photoshop was new. That they were cheap working teenagers on Photoshop. And it's like Marvel could hire Photoshop guys. They could hire staff for cheaper than they paid for Malibu Comics. But then it turned out I stopped buying X-Men Deluxe issues because of the gloss paper. It was $1 or $2 more. I think it may have been around 94 to 95. Digital FX stuff was creeping into those issues too. Yeah, that was probably when things were first being fully digitized and Photoshop effects were a thing. But yeah, it turned out that that DC was contemplating buying Malibu. And if DC had bought Malibu, that would make their market share bigger than Marvel's.
Yep.
And Marvel did not want that. So that's why they bought Malibu. They spent money on market share. They didn't, which is why if you go back and read about, like, Malibu was all excited about Marvel buying them. They thought they would be part of Marvel. The actual creators, and you can understand why. But nobody at Marvel in the offices gave one rat's ass about Malibu. They didn't want to make Malibu comics. They didn't care about Marvel characters teaming up with Malibu comics. They didn't have any interest in that whatsoever.
Right.
So Malibu's enthusiasm, from what I can tell, I was never there, but from what I can tell reading about it at the time, I remember their enthusiasm waned as time went by, and they realized that Marvel didn't really care about Malibu characters.
Unfortunately so. And all they did was just add more work to me by sending all that artwork from Malibu to me, and then getting stuck on me not being able to return that work because of the Malibu contracts with the artist. I suggested, can I just break up the artwork the Marvel way? And I got pushback as no. Each group has their own contract of how the artwork has to be separated and returned back. And I never heard back from that. It's like, okay, so what do we do with the art? It got put into a drawer, and that's it. And then eventually, when I left, I was told that the artwork was eventually just sent out to be stored somewhere, since it wasn't going back. And that was it. Never heard from it again. And it's like, we could have
So the Malibu comics art, when it was done for Marvel, or was it done from?
The artwork was shipped to Marvel from whatever books they had. So they had artwork from past books.
Okay,
not
so
any books
Malibu had
published.
the artwork in their offices. When they got bought by Marvel, they shipped it all to Marvel because they didn't want to deal with it.
Right. So now it was at Marvel. And I was like, okay, I have Malibu artwork. Can I break this up like the Marvel way, which was 8 pages to the inker, 14 pages to the penciler, and we're on our merry way. And I was told no, because there are contracts with each group of artists on what pages they can get, which is apparently why the pages were still sitting there.
Why didn't they just follow the contract?
I do not know. I never even got to see the contracts.
Yeah,
so I didn't even get a copy of it to even attempt to go, all right, let me do it the Malibu way. No idea, because they didn't
never
care.
gave anybody who was supposed to return the art the contract so they could follow it. So therefore, nothing could be done. That's such, Kafka-esque corporatism.
Yeah. So, every once in a while, I'll have a Malibu guy go, "Oh, you used to do art returns. Do you know where this art is?" No, I knew where it was, Don't know where it is now. And last I heard, it was like they basically removed it from the offices to get it out of the way, and I don't know wherever it went.
Wow.
Allegedly, it went to a warehouse somewhere.
Somewhere to be stolen out
And
of the
then
warehouse.
that's it. And who knows? Or maybe it was sold, but isn't that they never popped up? So I know artists still looking for them, and so they have. So they're in an art. They're somewhere.
I was just reading a reference somewhere to how all the early Marvel artwork was. Every issue that Steve Ditko drew of Spider-Man, the artwork was stolen from the Marvel warehouses. There was a big. That's right. I was reading. Someone wrote, in hindsight, that may have been the biggest art theft ever.
Probably
because they stole. I mean, not just comic art, but art. They stole like all the Ditko Spider-Man, all the early Fantastic, all the primary art from Marvel in the 60s, stolen in one go out of their warehouse. And I forget when it was stolen, like in the late 70s or something. But all that stuff now is worth millions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the stuff that they said they lost in a flood.
I don't recall the flood story.
Yeah, I don't remember that flood story.
They said they had 10% of the artwork when they went to give it back to.
Oh, that's what too. I didn't know they ever gave him an excuse when they gave it back when they gave Kirby back 10% of his artwork. I don't remember them saying an excuse that I read. I'm saying like I was there and heard it. I never read them giving Kirby an excuse. Marvel never.
I never heard of an excuse.
Yeah, Marvel never seemed to use Malibu characters in all those years, unlike DC, who absorbed them. Yeah, and I also think, like he was saying about the contracts, I think the creators have part ownership of the characters somehow. So Marvel never wanted to deal with those Malibu contracts, so they just didn't. Like when DC bought all those characters, they owned them outright and could do whatever they wanted with them. When Marvel bought Malibu, I guess, like I said, there was profit sharing or something with the characters in those Malibu contracts that Marvel just didn't want to deal with, so they didn't.
Yeah. The problem here is that they bought a 90s company. If they had bought a 70s company, that wouldn't have been a problem. Right. They would have just kept the characters.
Or if they just honored the contracts, it wouldn't be a problem. That's just amazing how that.
But honoring the contracts costs money that they don't want to share.
But they would have made money. It just always amazes me that, once again, that Kafka-esque corporate thing.
They would rather make $10 on something that they keep the $10 for themselves than to make $100 on something that they have to share 50.
Right, exactly. That's it. And then you're just like, are you nuts? There's money to be made here. No, we don't want to make money that way because we have to share it. What?
And it just seems like they don't even, in a weird way. Not weird way. It's just that corporate mentality.
Yeah.
What's funny is the stuff that they ignored. For how Howard the Duck, they were not supposed to publish that book after a while because it looked too much like Donald Duck, and so he had to be wearing pants all the time. And it's like, well, now that Disney owns them, maybe they could relook at those contracts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They could. Well, I can tell you when I did the production on The Essential Howard the Duck, which was like 2003, 2004. Corey Settlemeyer was the editor on it, and he told me the reason they were doing an Essential was in the contract with Disney, they were only allowed to print Howard the Duck one more time. So at that time, the Essential was the biggest format that they could get the most Howard the Duck in.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, since then, they've reprinted those Howard the Ducks tons of times because Disney owns them now. So they can just print them up all they want. That contract is meaningless since Disney owns Howard the Duck. They're not going to not print it. But I think the corporate thing too is that if we print this Marvel comic, we get 100% of the profit. If we print this Malibu comic, we get 90% of the profit. It doesn't even matter what the profit is. It doesn't. It's just like if we only get 90% of the profit, we don't want to deal with it. We want 100% of the profit. And you're like, but you can make tons of money. Maybe 90% of this profit is more than 100% of that profit, but that doesn't matter. That's not part of the thinking. But they got such cool things like Conan versus Rune. That was cool, but only because of Barry Windsor Smith. Issue 1 of Conan versus Rune and nothing else I know of. The Malibu artwork died on the way back to his home planet. There's a common thing that if a TV show is canceled, the studio wants to kill it so that it won't be a success for someone else. Ren and Stimpy and Zim. But why were they scared Malibu would be a DC? It wasn't they were scared that it would be a success. It would be that, let's say Marvel had, though this is low for Marvel, 55% of market share. And DC had, 48%. And Malibu had 10%. If DC bought Malibu, that would put DC at 58% and Marvel at 55%. And they did not want that.
They were also on that crazy buying spree, too.
So Marvel got to bury a ton of characters made with passionate creators. And it wasn't even on purpose. It was just...
Yeah, but they did buy a mainstream publisher just to get the Barbie rights, and that part I don't get either.
Who did they buy to get the Barbie rights? Was that in the...
It was a mainstream publisher.
And was this in the 90s?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Remember that there was
doing Barbie. I don't remember how they got the rights.
But it wasn't Marvel who decided that they were going to do a Barbie comic. Mm-hmm. They bought the publisher who was doing Barbie.
Okay.
I don't even remember. I remember the comic. I don't remember the publisher.
Yeah, I remember Marvel doing it. Hildy Mesnick was the editor.
Yeah.
I think Kevin Kobasic was the assistant editor on Barbie. That may have been his first job at Marvel. He went from being the assistant editor on Barbie to the assistant editor on Punisher. Much more glamorous.
Same amount of guns, too.
Who the two? Amanda Connor did a little Barbie on those days. That's where she got her start at Marvel.
Yep.
And there's another one named Anna Marie Cool, another woman. They both did Barbie, and they both did some terrific covers for Barbie. If you look at Marvel's Barbie in the early 90s, some really good covers by Amanda Connor and Anna Marie Cool. I used to collect them just for the covers.
I think the first issue was John Romita Sr.
Yeah.
For the first Barbie issue, but the rest were Amanda's.
Merry Crackmas, T. Comic correct. Yeah, let's see what else did I get this week. And Rogue Sun, issue number 9, and this one was a good issue. I remember issue number 8. It was a little bland to me. I was a little disappointed with it. Issue number 9 picked up again. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Once again, a teenage superhero comic, except it's kind of more like, what if Flash Thompson got the superpower? Because this kid's still in high school, and he's a bit of a bully. He's a bit of a high school bully. And he was picking on his nerdy best friend in this one. But then he got his ass kicked by this other super villain guy. So it's just your basic teenage superhero story, but pretty well done. It's the second comic in the Massive verse that I've been enjoying. I like Radiant Black. I like Rogue Sun. Radiant Pink, not so much, but that's a 5-issue one. I also didn't like, what was the other one? There's another one in the Radiant, in the Massive, what did I just call it? Massive verse? I can't remember its name, but that one I bought an issue or 2 of, and that was enough. So they're not all winners, but Rogue Sun is solid. It was the second book in the Massive. Mm-hmm.
Have any of those Radiant stories been made into trade paperbacks yet?
Oh yeah, Radiant Black is in trade. They're on like volume 4 of trade paperbacks.
Wow. Okay.
because that was the first one, so they're up around issue 20. I'd recommend that one of all of them. It's just kind of the most fun and the most. No, what's funny about that one is I keep thinking it's a teen superhero story because of the art style, but the guys are really in their mid-30s. But I keep forgetting that. I keep thinking it's like Invincible, where he's 20 years old, because that's the art style.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Tit Goblin, I just Googled the Marvel Barbie covers. My iPhone turned into a mother box, and now I'm trapped in the extreme neon 90s. They are cool, though. Yeah. The extreme neon 90s. Yeah, they're nicely done, those. But they're some of my favorite covers of the era.
Barbie Volume 1 ran 63 issues. Then we had the spin-off book, Barbie Fashion. That ran 53 issues. And then there was a couple of specials afterwards.
Right. It was around for a while. And with those comics now, I think some of them have gone up in price a little bit because Barbie collectors like them.
And with the movie coming out, that usually causes comics to jump as well.
By the way, I could not. I watched the trailer for that movie, and I could not believe that was a. Her name just flew out of my head.
Margot Robbie.
Greta. The woman whose coat I have. All of a sudden, I can't remember. Noah Baumbach and Greta. All of a sudden, oh my goodness, why did her name fly out of my head? I couldn't believe she was the director on that movie. I was like, she's the one who's. I'll show you. This is my one piece of Hollywood memorabilia that's always in the back of my videos. This woman right here, in the coat that I own. She's the director on the Barbie movie, and the writer. Greta Gerwig. There we go. I don't know why I couldn't remember her name, but this is Greta Gerwig's coat from the movie Damsels in Distress, a Whit Stillman movie, one of my favorites. That. For some reason, Whit Stillman's production team started selling movie memorabilia on eBay like last year, I think it was. And I saw this coat on there. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy that coat. It was like $150. I'm like, I've paid more than that for an actual coat I've worn it. And here it comes with a certificate of authenticity, Damsels in Distress. And I printed out the movie, I screenshotted the frame she's in wearing the coat, and it hangs with the coat. And I've taken some pictures of my friends in this coat too, posing in this same pose. I have to do that again. I haven't done that in a while. Matter of fact, I have a Facebook album of my friends posing in this coat. There's only 3 or 4 pictures in it, but I'm going to find some more people who can fit in this coat.
You got to draw that coat into one of your covers.
Yeah.
I found the name of that publisher that had a Barbie. It was and it's not only Barbie. The reason why Marvel did those Gargoyles comics, it was also from this publisher, Welsh Publishing.
I remember that name now. Wow. Looking forward to taking my daughter to that Barbie flick, Cotton Candy Colored Nightmare. Yeah. Noah Baumbach usually does really talky films too. He's in the there's a category of films I like that Whit Stillman, who did that Damsels in Distress, is in, and they're films based around conversation. And a lot of Noah Baumbach's films are based around conversation too. And same with Whit Stillman, though I like Whit Stillman's better. So I was shocked to find out that it was Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach doing that Barbie film. I was like, whoa, that's going to be different. And the ill-fated Barbie fascist comics redecorating Hagler's brain. Okay. Was the inside art in the 90s? Yeah, most of the inside art was decent. It was what you expect from Barbie art. It was kind of an Archie style, a little more stylized, but it was by Anna Marie Cool and Amanda Connor, a lot of it. So it was solid Barbie, but it had its own style to it that if you're looking for Punisher art, it's not in Barbie. I have a few Barbie books on my shelf, but I have no idea where they are.
I know I have a box with a bunch of issues in them.
That describes Wilson's entire collection.
Yep.
I know I have a box with a bunch of issues.
I know I have a box with them in it.
Where exactly that box is, I don't know. That's why I have a database
in the closet.
to tell me where my box, what's on my boxes and shelves. But I have to remember to update it when I move things. That's key. Otherwise, it doesn't help.
So how's your database set up? Is it like an Excel sheet or? I'm curious because I remember years ago, back when I worked in a comic book shop for like 25, 30 years ago, someone did put out a comic book database program.
I used to use FileMaker Pro. Nowadays, but my FileMaker Pro was outdated by like 15 years. I was still running a 15-year-old copy of FileMaker Pro, which is a database program. And I knew it just enough to make a database in it for my comics. Nowadays, FileMaker Pro is subscription only, and it's a hardcore database program. I mean, I guess you use it for databases for business, for running. Like when I upgraded my computer like 3 years ago, my 15-year-old FileMaker Pro would not run on it anymore. So I had to figure out what to do. Because I'm like, I got my whole comics in it and I can't run it on my computer anymore. So then I decided I wanted to figure out how to import it to what's the name? Numbers, which is the Mac Excel program, database program, but not hardcore database. Like FileMaker Pro, you run back-end databases for business and websites and stuff I don't even know about in the least.
Right.
So what I had to do, I eventually figured out, because I had to download a demo of FileMaker Pro in order to export my database so I could import it to Numbers. Otherwise, I have to re-enter all my comics in the database, and that ain't happening.
Right.
But what was funny was FileMaker Pro was such an expensive, high-end, subscription now that after I downloaded the demo, you can't download it without giving them your phone number. I started having a salesman call me. I never picked up because why am I going to do that? He called me for like a month, I guess, trying to sell me, FileMaker Pro. But I was like, you know what? If they got salesmen calling people, that's a high-end program these days. But let me share with you my screen. I'll show you where is present, share screen. Let me bring over, where is it? Do I have it here? Comic catalog. There is my, and you can see here, it's the comic, it's the issue numbers, it's the publisher, and over here is where it's located. Studio shelf 1, studio. So I described because I got shelves in 3-4 different rooms. So I describe which shelf it's on, or if it's in a box, it's in a box and which closet the box is in. But if I got something in a box, I may as well get rid of it. I'm never digging those boxes out. But this is how I do it, and it's searchable. It's not as pretty and elegant as my FileMaker Pro one, but it works fine. And I also have if I collect it or not, the series, and numbers of it. It keeps track of the numbers of stuff in my collection. But I think I have to actually update it. It's like FileMaker Pro automatically kept a running tally of when I buy a new issue, I now put, I have 2 issues. I just make the number. When I enter Ginseng Roots number 11, I just put, I now have 11 issues of it. And it would keep a running tally of the number of comics in my collection. It seems with like numbers, I have to tell it to update the running. It doesn't automatically update the running tally that I can figure out how. But I'm like, it's kind of nutty. But that's how if I wanted, like, if you were to ask me where an issue of Amazing Spider-Man is, I could go to my Amazing Spider-Man section and say, oh, it's in my bedroom bookcase B, shelf 2. Which is the most important thing in the whole database, is me being able to find stuff.
Find it, right.
But that were, that what you would do is you'd put numbers on all your boxes and say what number it's in. Box 24. Maybe the location of that box. Room 3, studio, bedroom, closet, under the hallway, closet 1, box 3. That's all. That's just the way you can find things.
Yeah, mine are as you know, just boxes. I did go into the habit of generalizing what's in the box, so I know where my trade paperbacks are, and I know the last time I opened that box. So when I was, because at one point I was going through to find stuff to sell on eBay, and the first thing I was looking for were like first appearance of Harlequin, because I know I had at least one issue of that.
Right.
So as I was going through stuff, I started somewhat organizing, or at least putting down that, what are comic books, what are trade paperbacks. Marvel and DC was being broken up for a while. For my own thing, I started removing all the Star Trek books so I could have them all in one place. And then as I was putting things away, I was marking on the box and marking the year that I last closed it. And then every now and then I'll come up with a box and go, wow, it's been like 5 years since I've opened this box. And so at one point, it's like, if I come to a box that I haven't put a date on it, then it's like, ooh, this is something I have no idea what's in it. This is going to be fun. And that's more fun. That's more fun than finding a box with a date on it where it's like, oh, it's been how long since I've touched this box? At least the unknown box is so old that I have no idea. It doesn't matter. But
it's a little bit of a mystery.
Right. That's the fun part. The box that's marked, it's like, oh, I know I've touched this. I moved this around. Why didn't I organize this better? But
nothing really good in there. That's why.
That's most likely what it is.
LibreOffice for the win. Is that an open source database program? Like
LibreOffice is the thing that makes Microsoft Office obsolete, and you don't have to pay a dime for it, unless you want to, because the creators of the creators appreciate it.
Okay,
it's actually a bit like everyone can contribute to LibreOffice.
Okay,
it's what I use. It's got everything.
I use a writing program called Scrivener, which was originally made for film writing. I use it for writing all my blogs and things. So I don't use any Office Pro. Then I use Text Edit to keep track of some stuff. Matter of fact, my list of best comics and stuff from last year is in a Text Edit file. That much I know. Where that Text Edit file is, I don't know.
LibreOffice is a.
Sorry, I was going to say, on the Mac, you could search for, if you could at least remember the month.
Yeah, I don't. Well, maybe I'll have to look.
Because you could search for the month of an item of a document and the type of document it is.
Yeah.
So you could do
I'll have to try that.
Yeah, whatever the .ai or initials is, TXT. You could do a search for that and that particular month when that document could have been created. You might be able to narrow it down that way.
Probably last December. Then I'll have to try that. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Again, I've misplaced digital files, and what did I name this one? And sometimes
I'm usually very organized, which is why not finding this file to me is like, what? How could I not find? I usually keep all my writing files in one file. Anything I've written, and usually everything's in Scrivener. That's where all my writing goes. Why this one isn't in Scrivener? I don't know. Here's another comic I got, Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer. Issue number 8 we're up to. Fun story, and this is a good sort of barbarian story this has been. We got barbarians versus hell dragons this issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised at how this is one of those comics. I'm surprised about how much I like it. I even like I think it's called Dawn Attacks. It's another Frank Frazetta another comic based on a Frank Frazetta's painting. But I just found out that I bought the first issue of, I think last week or the week before, and I liked that one too. Last week, and I ended up ordering the second issue of that, but I hadn't put it on my pull list yet.
Quick question.
Yep.
How does somebody watch what we're doing right now?
They go to my channel. They look up Jared Osborne. Put in Jared Osborne on YouTube.
I'm on your channel and I click live and I'm not.
Click videos.
Videos.
And it should be the top video that comes up.
Top video. 12:21.
Do you see it?
No.
Yeah. Oh, teaching. Let's take a moment out to teach Chris how to use YouTube.
I'm looking at your homepage on YouTube, Jared Osborne, at Jared Osborne.
Yep, there I am.
Okay, you told me to go to videos.
Now hold on. When you go to, there's usually a default list of videos.
Yeah.
Those ones, for some reason, can be any ones. But if you click on the videos tab, it should show you them in chronological order.
Okay, and they're in chronological order, starting with.
Yeah, and then there's uploads and live streams.
And there's live. Maybe I go to channels because live isn't giving me anything.
No. There's some there in the videos. There's a difference between looking at uploads and at live streams. And you have to go to live streams.
On the left. Live now.
Yeah.
Live
now. If you
Saturday Night Live.
No, that took me away from Jared.
Why?
Let's see. Popular.
Go back to live.
Go back to live.
Now put your on there. Just hold it.
Use the cloud. Never gets lost. Oh yes, it
Okay,
does.
yeah. There it is.
Google Doc.
It's on live. You got to click live. It's not in the videos category.
Gotta
It's not
click
video
live.
yet.
Okay. Dang, I've never watched myself live. I've only seen it afterwards when it's in video.
I still keep my files on thumb drives.
This is like the movie Spaceballs, where they watch the movie as it's playing, the movie.
We're watching it now. We're at now. Just then.
Yeah, I've used Google Docs for work, but I don't use it for my own stuff. I prefer Scrivener keeps everything in one place. It's just got folders, and it's just meant to organize writing. And that's what I use it for.
I prefer not to.
Not to use anything or not to write?
No, I'm Bartleby the Scrivener.
Ah, okay. Bartleby. I've been rereading Bone, too. That's a lot of fun. Since I bought the digital copy.
From the very, very beginning, or did you start?
Yeah, I'm about 500 pages in. That's freaking long. Forget how long it is until you read when I go to read the whole thing. Well, it's like, woo. I think it took me, it's taken me, because usually I was reading it on the train during my commute. 2 days a week I've been commuting in. And usually I can read one of my thriller novels. I can read one of those novels in about 4 to 6 trips. So far I've taken 4 trips on Bone, and I'm a third of the way through. Not somewhere between a third and a half. I'm like, wow, this takes longer to read than my novels. You don't think of a comic like that, but it's big. And it's not particularly wordy either. It's just big.
No, it's not. not many panels on the pages, if I remember correctly.
About 6. He goes for about the 6 panel, and there's sequences that get a little wordy, but there's also sequences that are all cartooning. But 1,300 pages is a lot of pages. But I have a particular dislike of writing programs like Word and Google Docs, because sometimes I get those in from people who think they're designers, and you're like, oh, I have to strip all of the design elements out of them in order to get it into InDesign.
Right.
And then rebuild their terrible design in InDesign. So that's one of the reasons I have a prejudice against Microsoft Word.
You shouldn't be prejudiced in modern society, Jared.
That's why I want to make America great again. Back in the days when you could be prejudiced, an old-time society. I didn't get yelled at by the likes of Chris G. Russo for not liking Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
When we could wear our Microsoft Word hate on our sleeves and nobody would say anything.
It's a different time, different time.
You're canceled for hate speech against the Microsoft text community.
Microsoft Word.
I remember when it used to have a talking paperclip.
Oh,
do you want to do
this? Paperclip.
Do you want to do this? No, I just want to open the program. Can I help you with this? Are you writing a resume? No, I just need to just take down a note.
No. I remember a few years ago I started using OpenOffice, but there was one thing that annoyed me is that I couldn't open DocX and XLSX files. I mean, I could open them, but I would have to save them as older format files. But then when there's got to be something nowadays that's open and can open recent Microsoft files. Okay, and there was it. It's LibreOffice.
I'll have to look that one up. Jared Osborne design, as bad as you want it. That is true. I adhere to. First of all, I got along much better at Marvel after years when I learned to say, "Okay, I'll do it this way. It's wrong and bad, but I don't care. It'll cost us extra." And then I always say, because there's a saying by, I forget which actor said it. There's a famous actor who said a quote that was something like, "Good movies or bad movies, I don't care. I'll make either one. The bad ones just cost a little bit more." And that's what I got. That's what I got used to saying to him. Like, I'll do it this way. It's bad and wrong is going to cost extra in the end to fix it, but I don't care. Clippy. That was the paperclip, huh?
Clippy.
The paperclip.
I only learned about that paperclip a few years ago when I was making custom Magic the Gathering cards for some people on eBay. And somebody wanted one made with Clippy on it. So I had to look up. I was like, it's a Microsoft thing. Otherwise, I didn't know about Clippy.
Do you remember clip art?
Clip art? You mean the general category? That's still around.
But it is?
Yeah,
okay.
There's still clip art.
Okay.
It's all digital.
Mm-hmm. No, I remember I turned there was a generic car that you could pull up, right. And when I was still in high school, I turned it into a NASCAR for fun.
Yeah, I don't think clip art is as lucrative as it once was because people can just steal stuff off the internet. As a matter of fact, somebody showed. Did you see those Trump NFTs that came out recently with Trump as a superhero? His big announcement from a few days ago. Well, of course, people have been analyzing them and breaking them down.
The stupid thing, you didn't have to do that because there's a bunch of art made by 4chan people which is well made, and they put him in a Warhammer 40K regalia. The God, that's why the God Emperor meme comes from. It's the God Emperor from Warhammer 40K.
Who knows? I don't know their business plan, but whoever they hired to do the art, the illustrator, he used, and sort of along the lines of clip art, it was stock photos for reference for some of them. Except you can see he didn't pay for the stock photos because like the you can look through their stock photos and you can see like they put like a grid across them with little tags through the grid so that you can't just steal and use the stock photo. Well, he, of course, photoshopped most of that out. I say most of that because one of the little tags like in the middle of the figure was still there. And someone on TikTok was breaking it down and going, look at this. You can go back and with a reverse Google with a Google image search, you can find the original stock photo. And then she even compared it. She was showing the stock photo to the Trump NFT and showing it's like, oh, he didn't even pay for this one because look, here's one of the little security tags in the photo still. I was like, oh, look at that.
Yeah, but it's really the ridiculous thing is though the memes are already full of art made by nerds. Because it was made by nerds, it's actually good.
He could have just stolen from the nerds.
Yeah, no, seriously, I had forgotten about this. Somebody made a statue of Warhammer 40K Trump.
I think Clippy was the idea behind Badgie on Star Trek The Lower Decks. Both are evil. I've never watched Star Trek The Lower Decks.
I know the episode he's talking about, and I believe that's exactly where it came from. In Lower Decks, they used the Star Trek badge as a computer-generated helper. And Clippy turned out, but he would pop up like Clippy would. So the badge would pop up and eventually wants to kill its creator. So it became evil, like all things do.
Glow-in-the-dark Dracula with Chris made my Christmas. What was glow-in-the-dark? Was
that a Ben Cooper mask?
Yeah, it's a giant Ben Cooper mask.
Oh, okay.
There's actually how do I do this? I flip the camera. I'm never gonna figure it out.
Yeah, we'll just point it at it. Yeah,
we got a mummy.
Nice.
Merry Christmas, Tit Goblin. From Dracula, glowing in the dark.
And creature. No, that's an alien.
That's an alien.
Is that the
It looks like a Mars Attacks alien, but that's what inspired the Mars Attacks alien.
Okay.
He's a creature from this island, Earth, I want to say.
So everybody stole from Ben Cooper, including Steve Ditko.
I don't know that Steve Ditko stole from Ben Cooper. I've seen the costume and that
story is so.
The evidence is less than convincing to me.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
The whole The whole concept is like they were both in New York, so he had to run into that office.
They both used spider's webs on a spider-based costume.
No, they use spider webs with the same pattern.
It's not the same pattern.
It's the same pattern.
It's not the same pattern.
Not.
I've seen them both. I've made spider patterns. I make patterns all the time. I teach students how to make patterns. It is not the same pattern.
I know Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my friend. That, sir, was not Spider-Man.
That's an example of two people coming to the same conclusion. You got to make a spider-based costume. That's what you do. You put webs on it. You put big spider eyes on it. Ditko's is much better designed.
And even pulling that, I think the legend also has it that Kirby could have worked for Ben Cooper at some point as well. That popped up as a possibility,
Well, Kirby worked on a completely different Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was like,
Looked
where are these
nothing like
connections
Ditko.
coming from?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that connection I never bought into.
Yeah.
Having seen parallel stuff like that all the time, especially for something so basic. Once again, one of the things I can remember my teacher telling me, one of my art teachers way back in the day, which I've always found to be true, is when you're working on an idea, when you're working on thumbnails, you got to throw out your first, 3 or 4 thumbnails. Because if you came up with the idea quickly, that's the same idea everyone comes up with quickly. And so you work through those first 3 or 4, and then you get to the more original stuff. And when you're working on something like animal-based, it's all usually kind of the same. It's like, if you're working on a spider, you got to get spider's webs in there. You got to get big spider's eyes in there. It's like, that's like the stuff that's the stuff that tells you it's a spider. Without that, it's not a spider. So that's why I don't buy into that Steve Ditko stole from the Ben Cooper costume.
Mm-hmm.
If I were coming up with a spider-based costume, it would have webs on it.
One story that we have in the automotive world is that Ferdinand Porsche, when the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia, Ferdinand Porsche stole the design of a Tatra car to make the Volkswagen Beetle.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was he a Nazi werewolf or just a regular Nazi?
No. Ferdinand Porsche was a citizen of an Austrian-Hungarian empire before World War I. He chose as an ethnic German. He chose Czechoslovakian nationality after the breakup of the Austrian Empire. Yet he only worked in Germany after that. Especially first in Mercedes, then in Auto Union. Then he joined the SS, and as a member of the SS, that's how he designed the Volkswagen Beetle and all the tanks used by the Wehrmacht. Then the French wanted to execute him as a war criminal after World War II. But the Americans gave Porsche's son the money to bail him out. Because the Americans
were bailing out Nazis all over Europe.
Yeah, because the Americans needed to make they were busy with West German reconstruction, and one of the things they needed to do is make sure that the Germans were mobile. So they needed a cheap car, and the bill. And Ferdinand Porsche's Beetle was it.
I keep your thumbnails on a thumb drive. It's a rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Did you see the Ditko porn Spider-Woman? Predated Spider-Man. I have not seen that. I've got that big book on his studio mate whose name just flew out of my head. That's got some Ditko art in it. But I didn't notice any Spider-Woman. I'll have to look that one up. What was his studio mate's name again? Ditko, the studio mate who did that dirty drawings all the time. Eric Stanton. There we go. Eric Stanton. So if Ditko was doing porn, he was doing it with Eric Stanton. He was helping out his buddy. Eric Stanton. A man who knows his place, or something like that is the book I had. Let's see. One last comic I got this week is What's the Furthest Place from Here? Issue number 9. And I really didn't like issue number 8 because once again, this is an indie comic by Tyler Boss and Matthew Rosenberg. I forget which one's the artist. But last issue and this issue have had guest artists. And I'm like, And last issues I especially didn't like because it was kind of this mainstream manga style guest artist, which I just didn't think suited my taste, and I didn't think it fit with the book. This artist I like better, but I'm still like, I'd rather see Tyler Boss, I think is the art. I don't even remember which one's the artist, but I'd rather see him draw his own book. And what I noticed was strange about this one, because I think this is a flashback story in this world, and it was actually pretty well as a sort of done in one story. It was pretty well done. But I noticed something with this issue that I hadn't really articulated. I hadn't really articulated before. I hadn't really set in my mind. But whoever does the art on this, Tyler Boss or Matthew Rosenberg, their art is sort of very idiosyncratic and stylized. And nowadays, or I shouldn't even say nowadays, since the 80s, when artists no longer drew characters in style anymore, it's like it became sort of normal for each new artist on a Marvel or DC book to draw the character not on model, but in their own style. The perfect example of that is Paul Smith's X-Men. I remember reading Paul Smith's X-Men at the time, and there was a big reveal at the end of one issue where a woman, Madeline Pryor, first shows up, who supposed to look just like Jean Grey. I remember being so confused by that reveal because she didn't look like Jean Grey. I didn't, and I remember other people at the time who X-Men fans who I talked to were like, what was that? Was that supposed to be Jean Grey at the end? Because we didn't all know, because that was when, and John Byrne has mentioned this before, see, that was when comics first stopped being drawn on model all the time. And I remember being very confused by that issue. So in this issue, since we get a new artist and a new style, I don't know if these are all new characters or not. I don't know, because it's a flashback. I'm like, these the characters I was already reading about? Because they're all sort of normal humans in normal clothes, most of them, except for the guy with a big frog on his head. So I'm like, do I know any of these characters? I read this whole thing. Like I said, it's actually a good comic. The artist in this one is good. But I have no idea if this story is of the same characters who I've been reading about, or is of completely different characters who are new. Because nothing's drawn on model. And I don't remember the individual characters who are like, is this person a new person? I don't even know. But so it was like a little weird. That is the book it is in. Okay. Oh, it's in the Eric Stanton book that I've got. I'm gonna have to look for that Spider-Woman stuff. I never looked at the book closely enough, I think. I've just thumbed through it many a time, but never actually read that there was a Spider-Woman in it. So this was a good issue, but I'd rather have more issues by the original creators. I don't need fill-in artists on an indie book that much. And if you're going to do it, make it a separate series, I might buy it. But it's kind of like, I buy indie books because the same guys do it every month. So I don't like it when they change them for whatever reason. I would have preferred What's the Furthest Place from Here to take a hiatus than to buy sort of, What's the Furthest Place from Here books that aren't by the original creators. But they sold it to me, so what the heck? They made some people some money. I'm not that insulted by it that I won't buy it, but it's just like I said, this was actually a good issue. I enjoyed it, so I don't even want to tell you it's a bad issue. It was just kind of like, it wasn't a What's the Furthest Place from Here issue, that's all. The strange world of reading comics. You guys wouldn't know.
All I was thinking was that Paul Smith issues. I read it, and I didn't know who Jean Grey was because I think that was early enough for me to go. Jean was always a dead character, so
right.
To me it was like as I'm reading it, it tells me who she's supposed to look like. It's like okay, so it was fine. I like the Paul Smith run on.
Oh,
the
I like the
X-Men.
Paul Smith run, but that, like I said, that ending in particular confused me and confused everyone I knew who was reading the X-Men, because we did not know that was supposed to be Jean Grey, because she's not named at the end of the
Right.
you were supposed to figure out that she was supposed to be Jean Grey by just the way she looked, but she wasn't drawn on model, because that was, and as John Burns says, that was when artists first started, when on model didn't matter anymore, and she was drawn in Paul Smith's style,
Right.
and that's when that started happening. Because you used to have to keep comics on model, and the artists would, and that went away starting around that time. But like I said, I remember being confused by that issue. Comics with Bueller, saying hello to Paolo.
Hey, Bueller was doing a live show earlier.
Okay. Bueller. I was never a fan of Ferris Bueller. I didn't like him.
Well, you doesn't stop you from quoting him constantly.
I don't quote him as much as I quote you.
And you say you didn't like Bueller himself, not necessarily the movie.
Then I'll take that as a compliment that you're a bigger fan of me than you are of Ferris Bueller.
I am a bigger fan of you than I am of Ferris Bueller, no doubt.
Thank you.
I can't remember the last time I saw Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it since the 80s, probably. When did it come out?
Definitely 80s, but
87, I think.
I watch it usually if it's flipping channels and it's on, I'll end up watching it.
Ferris Bueller is much better.
Yes, subscribe to Comics with Bueller, and you can find his misadventures around the United States, looking for comics while his bus breaks down.
I'll have to check that out.
No, the thing is, Bueller here, he built a bus so we could go travel around the country. But
I had heard that, but I had never actually watched his channel. I have to watch his channel is what I have to do.
And there was a few months ago he kept having new problems every week.
he can do TikToks on van life.
Yeah. only broke down twice in the same year.
Van life on Twitter is real big. Chris has gone black in protest of me not liking Ferris Bueller. Is it Ferris or Ferris?
Ferris.
Ferris with an A?
Ferris. No,
see, I didn't even know that.
Ferris Bueller.
Ferris. I was saying Ferris all these years.
No, it is Ferris. It is Ferris with an E.
It's Ferris with an E?
Mm-hmm.
Like in Ferris.
Is the same Ferris in the Green Lantern?
Yes.
30,000 miles. Wow. Not bad. Mm-hmm. That is a lot.
It would have been easier. The car the van that's used that's most used in Europe as a conversion vehicle is the Fiat Ducato, which just happens to be sold in the US as the Ram ProMaster. So instead of trying to convert a bus, it's easier to turn to get a Ram ProMaster and turn it into an RV, and it will go for 150,000 miles.
Okay. Well, we should wind up for the evening. It's getting to our ending time. Another fun talk as ever, going all over the place.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys all have a Merry Christmas out there.
Yes.
And we'll see you next week. We'll be saying we'll have a Happy New Year out there.
Right.
All right. So good evening.
Take care, everybody.
We'll catch you next time.